Midwest Artist Project Services, or MAPS. We are an emerging nonprofit seeking to serve artists in St. Louis and beyond with professional development opportunities, education opportunities. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be announcing the launch of our fiscal sponsorship program, which will be really exciting. I was invited here today by Alex to talk about the Great Rivers Biennial and the application process. So, how many of you applied for the Great Rivers Biennial in the past? Okay, just a couple. How many of you have applied for anything ever? Okay, good. So this is not your first rodeo when you see the box that says name. You know what to do. So what we're going to do is walk through the entire application process, take a closer look at the guidelines, talk a little bit more about, okay, here's what they say, but what are they really asking for? And then just some kind of professional best practices when it comes to things like writing an artist statement or putting your work samples together. So for some of you, this might be review. For some of you, it might be a nice refresher. For some of you, it might be the first time thinking about it. What I'll do is kind of at the end of each section, I'll stop and ask for questions, because chances are if you have a question as we're going through, it's going to be addressed in about 5 minutes. So, but I will stop at the end of each part and ask for questions. But don't hesitate to interrupt me if something is like really, really unclear. So first, a little commercial for MAPS and an upcoming program that we have on Saturday, April 11th at 1 o'clock. The artist Vesna Jovanovic from Chicago will be in town. She is a really terrific artist. She currently is the artist in residence at the Museum of Surgical Science. And she is right on the cusp of her career kind of going to the next step. She has 2 solo exhibitions lined up next year in other parts of the country. But I'm excited for her to come, and she's going to talk not only about her own work, but also about the sort of best practices that she does to market her work, communicate what she's doing, network with other artists, get those residencies, and get those opportunities that have helped her to expand outside of her hometown. So that's going to be on April 11th. I actually have flyers up here as well. And I'm going to hand a few of these out if you can take one and pass it. I gave some already, but if you're interested, we would love to see you. So, and Alex is also going to be available to kind of chime in if there's something about the process that I can't answer. So like I said, we're going to talk about the purpose of the program, the qualifications and eligibility, the review process, sort of what happens after you hit send, the selection criteria, and then the actual components and work samples. So the purpose of the Great Rivers Biennial Exhibition and Award, collaborative exhibition program presented by CAM and the Gateway Foundation. It's set up to identify emerging and mid-career artists. And I have to say, this makes this program really exceptional. If you've done any research, you've probably seen there are a lot of artist fellowship programs out there. A lot of them, though, very clearly are for artists that when you look at their CVs, they're already a mile long. I think this is a great opportunity for artists here in St. Louis that are emerging or starting to move into the next phase of their careers to have this opportunity for broader exposure. The winners receive a grant of $20,000 and will be featured in the Great Rivers Biennial in 2016. So not only is there a nice cash award, also a museum exhibition. So the application deadline, which you probably tattooed on the inside of your eyelids, is May 4th at midnight. The next step is that there will be 10 semifinalists chosen. Then there will be a round of studio visits to those 10 semifinalists. The winners will be announced, and then the exhibition is on view in 2016. So, fairly long process, but you'll understand why when we walk through everything. The eligibility is that the artist must currently live inside the metro area, and the counties listed there. Degree-seeking graduate student in the final year of study only. So if you were a student in a different part of your academic career, that means you are not eligible for this program this time around. The artist must have lived in the St. Louis area for at least a year prior to the application deadline. So that means you must have lived in St. Louis since May 4th.
What happens if we're not going to be living in St. Louis during the time of next year, but
that
we
is...
have lived in St. Louis for the past 2 years?
So you're not going to be here between July 15 and August 2016. That might be something to email Alex about specifically. Are you leaving St. Louis permanently or leaving for an extended period of time?
Extended period of time.
That might be something, if you're still getting mail here, that might be something you can work out. If you're not going to be available to work with the curator, however, that might actually be an issue. So that might be something you would want to email and ask about specifically. Because as we'll talk about, the winners of the biennial, part of the experience of this is working closely with the curator here in St. Louis and working to develop what the installation is going to be. And I understand the expectation is that's going to be a very involved process. So if you're not here, that might be a challenge. That said, I don't want to say that anything's insurmountable. But again, that might be something to email and work out. So we just talked about being here during the production period, and then making sure that you would be available for the studio visit period, which would be June 21st to 23rd. I realize that's probably might seem like asking a lot if you don't know that you're going to be a finalist, and you've got a wedding or something, that might be coming up that weekend. But that is going to be a critical time. It's the only time the jurors can make those studio visits, so it's pretty critical. The alternative spaces can be arranged if you don't have a studio. I know that was something that occurred to me looking through the guidelines is, what if you don't have a studio? How can you do a studio visit? It sounds like Alex and Cam will be accommodating and helping to set up something that would replicate what a studio visit typically is like. Either using this space or another space here at Cam, or maybe even another space that would allow you to come in, bring your work, and do the process of a studio visit. Has anybody done a studio visit? Yeah, okay, just a quarter. They're a great experience to have. If you've never done one, I would really recommend setting that up for yourself or with friends or doing kind of a practice run. There's resources available from College Art Association and other places about sort of how to do a studio visit. And I expect anybody who put their hand up right now would also be happy to talk with you about what it's like. So. And then those visits have to be in person, so you actually have to do it. The artist's work must fall within the areas of drawing, film and video, installation, mixed media, painting, photography, printmaking, sculpture. And we also talked about the broad sort of definition of mixed media or multimedia would all kind of fall under that. I know we have a lot of artists in St. Louis working in a variety of disciplines. I think a way to think about that as we get to the exhibition proposal part of the application is to think about how your work is going to fit within a museum space. And that artists may not have previously exhibited as part of the Jurors Biennial. So the review process, and I always think that it's really important to be able to think about what's going to happen to this thing after I hit the send button. Artists who submit good applications or artists who can sort of visualize what it's going to be like in the panel room, what it's going to be like for somebody on the other end to be reviewing their materials. It's hard to do, but but you can do it and think through it. So I think it's good to think through those things even before you start writing your artist statement and writing your proposal. So after the May 4th deadline is passed, applications are reviewed for eligibility, completeness, and probably goes without saying, if your application is incomplete, you have already disqualified yourself. Between 150 and 200 applications are anticipated based on past submissions. And I don't know if that sounds like a lot to you, but I will tell you, I just today looked at the statistics for the New York Foundation for the Arts, where I used to work. They have a artist fellowship program. They give about between 100 and 150 fellowships every year for artists just in New York State of $7,000. So not very close to the $20,000 that this is for. That's for $7,000, and they get 4,000 applications every year. This only gets 200 applications. So your chances are really good. So congratulations to you already for taking advantage of this opportunity. The jurors will review the work samples and the exhibition proposals. The CAM staff is not a part of this process. They facilitate it, but they are not on the juror panel. They're not going to be there giving any kind of endorsements or anything. It is just the jurors. We'll talk about who they are in a second. So those work samples and application materials are reviewed and rated electronically. And I don't know if the process is they do a yes, no, maybe pile, or if they go through all the applications and it's, okay, let's get it down to our top 50, then let's get it down to our top 25, then let's get it down to our top 10. But most review processes go through some kind of process like that. So they'll review it. The jurors will select 10 semifinalists for studio visits. And then they'll convene again after the studio visits. I don't know if that'll be in person or electronically, to select the 3 winners. And it could be up to 3 winners. It doesn't have to be 3, but it could be, it's up to 3. Jurors are no longer part of the process. After the selection has been made, then the jurors are done, and then the CAM curator will step in and really be the one to oversee working with the artists to develop their exhibitions. Any questions so far? So, most of you, it sounded like, had come and seen the Great Rivers Biennial in the past. I think that that's the first step in putting together a successful proposal, is having a sense of, okay, well, who's gotten this thing in the past? So, just in case you're not familiar, I wanted to review quickly the past 3 winners, or the winners from the 2014 Biennial. Brandon Enschultz, Carly Trosclair, really making good use of the space there, and Casey Zavaglio. Also, all 3 of these artists have excellent websites. I really recommend looking at their websites and seeing how they have them set up, how they have their works, how they have their CD. Really, really good websites for all 3 of them. And then here are the previous winners from 2012 and 2010. So if you're not familiar with these artists, I really recommend, and these are on the CAM website as well. If you look at the Great Rivers Biennial website, the lists of the past winners are on there. Even though it's a new curator this year, even though it's a new set of jurors, I really recommend taking some time to look at these artists' websites, look at their work. It won't necessarily be a key to exactly what the jurors are looking for, but I do think it gives you a sense of the professionalism of the work, the conceptual ideas behind the work, the depth of the work, and that these artists have really, that they made the most of the museum space when they proposed what they were going to do. So the 2015 jurors, and again, I congratulate Cam, this is an amazing panel of jurors. Valerie Oliver, Senior Curator at the Contemporary Arts Museum of Houston. And by the way, these bios are also all on the CAM website. Again, I really recommend taking a look at them. Look at these projects that these folks have organized or been a part of. And that, again, will give you a sense of the people who are going to be looking at your work. And I highlighted Valerie's role as Senior Curator at Contemporary Arts Museum of Houston, the fact that she was one of the curators of the Whitney Biennial in 2000. Paul Pfeiffer, well-known working artist, and Ali Sabatnik. Not only is she the curator of the Hammer Museum, which is at UCLA, she oversees their artist residency program. And she was also a curator of the Berlin Biennial. So these are some amazing people to get your work in front of. And something to keep in mind, you might be thinking, oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to get this, should I even bother putting in the effort? Getting your work in front of these people is an amazing opportunity. And even if you aren't selected for the Great Rivers Biennial, they'll have heard your name, they'll have seen your work. And it does happen that even if you aren't, because they're just one of 3 jurors, so they may not win that argument if they're fighting for you in the jury room. But it does happen that sometimes they'll write down your name on a piece of paper and you might get an email or a phone call a couple weeks later. Or they might see your name here, and then a year later you take advantage of another opportunity, they see your name again. A couple years later you have another opportunity, they see your name again. You're going to be somebody who's then on their radar. So the next time they're thinking about organizing something, especially the curators, you're out there. Your name is put in front of them. So it's a great opportunity, so I really can't stress that. So the ineffable question, what are they looking for? And I think that if you've come to camp programs and exhibitions over the past couple of years, you have a sense of the type of programming that this museum presents. What really they're looking for is a clear sense of vision or an artistic signature. And this is part of everybody's lifelong journey as an artist, right? You're constantly trying to find that. But really what they're looking for here is someone who has a really strong idea of what they want to accomplish artistically, and that comes through in their work. They're going to be looking for work that is engaged in a larger art world conversation, and that shows an awareness of what is happening in contemporary art on a global scale. So, no small thing, right? But really, it's what they're looking for is, if you're a traditional landscape painter, you better have a good reason for why your work is relevant to the contemporary art world for this opportunity. Again, not to discourage anybody who's a traditional landscape painter, but this is what they're looking for this particular opportunity. Work that shows an intellectual approach, it's thoughtful, and has a conceptual root or contextual meaning. So I think that really becomes apparent when you look at some of the descriptions, and again, this is all on the CAM website, but when you look at some of the descriptions of the work that was included in the 2014 Jurors Biennial, demonstrating the ability of the medium to go beyond its conventional two-dimensional use. This is Brandon, if you're not familiar with his work, he pours paint and then breaks them open to create these sculptural forms. And then it's also in conversation with a Tennessee Williams play, and it's playing on ideas of tangible, things and aging. I mean, there's stuff behind it. And so really, that's what they're looking for. Carly's work about buildings as ever-changing organisms that reveal patterns of beauty over time. Now, you don't need to necessarily write about your own work that way, but there's ideas behind it, right? So. Overall professionalism of the application, that you've submitted high-quality images, that your writing is clear and that doesn't have any typos, and a thorough resume or CV. And we'll get into the CV in just a second. But just overall that you've made the effort to submit a high-quality application. And I can tell you that I'm a RAC panelist. I review the Program Support 1 applications, and I've also sat in on other panel reviews for other opportunities. And it's quite striking, the people who put in the effort for a good application and the people who don't. It's very apparent very quickly. And it's sort of like, why should we invest in you if you didn't invest an hour into this application? Proposal that is specific to this opportunity. It seems obvious, but some people like to just cut and paste and don't really pay attention to what they're actually applying for. So obviously, this application merits very strong, clear dedication, exclusive to the Jurors Biennial. So application requirement number 1 is the artist statement. Who here has an artist statement? If I asked you right now to email me your artist statement, you can send it. Okay, just about half. So artist statement is one of those things to keep in your toolkit. If you have a website, it should absolutely be on your website. It should absolutely be something if you happen to have the opportunity to meet a gallerist or a curator and they say, tell me about your work, it's something you can email to them. So it's really something, even if you don't end up not using it for this opportunity, really something to have in your back pocket. It's not something you constantly need to be updating, but you should take a look at it about once a year or if you complete a significant body of work. So let's talk really quickly about artist statements. Again, whether you have one and you're thinking about freshening it up, or if you don't have one and you need to create it, this is a great opportunity to do so. So, what is an artist statement? Your artist statement is a brief description of your work that provides the reader with information about your sources, ideas, process, and inspiration. So basically, it's when you have that awkward conversation with somebody at like family reunion and they're like, oh, you're an artist? What do you do? It's basically the more thoughtful answer to that question. About 2 to 3 paragraphs, really no more than 500 words. 500 words is kind of like a full standard size sheet of paper. I advocate for shorter, but for this opportunity, you can submit up to 500 words. It informs the viewer about the work, but it doesn't need to explain the work. You know, something that gets a lot of artists hung up sometimes is they say, look, if I could write about it, I wouldn't be an artist, right? Your artist statement does not need to explain every single thing about your work, but it should inform the viewer about maybe a technique or a medium that you use or a cultural context that they might not get just by looking at it. It supports the work, but it doesn't need to replicate the work. So, you know, if you're a landscape painter, you don't need to say, my work is landscape painting, and leave it at that. It's, you know, you talk a little bit more about why this is fascinating to you. I'm actually going to call out Nelson because you said something very interesting in a conversation we had once talking about artist statements, and I was encouraging you to write about what was fascinating to you, and you said, oh, I don't have to write about myself. Okay. and that, I think, is a great way to think about artist statements, because a lot of times you feel like you have to be writing about your soul or your own self and identity, and really it's about your work and what's fascinating to you, what motivates you to, you know, pick up the brush or get out the pen or get out the clay. It's really, really about that. It's about what's fascinating to you. And as I said, consider updating your artist statement every time you complete a new or singular body of work. So if you're having trouble getting started, here are some prompts that you might use to start the writing process. What might viewers want to know about your work that they can't get just from looking? Where does your inspiration come from? Is it from part of your background, your identity, your biography, something historical, pop culture, from nature? Where do you take your inspiration from? What about the process, either creative or constructive, might the viewer find interesting? And that's often a great place to start. What is the technique that you're using, and why did you use that technique over others? What might be meaningful about the materials that you work with? If there's indigenous meaning to the materials that you chose, that's always a great thing to include in an artist statement. And then where does this current body of work fit in with your overall development as an artist? Also a great thing to help people understand where you are in your artistic career. You know, is working in ceramics something you just started doing after a lifetime of painting? Or are you continually pushing yourself to excel in one certain medium? So I want to show you a sample artist statement by an artist named Alison Strafella. It's published in a book called The Artist Guide by Jackie Battenfield that I really, really recommend. I meant to bring it with me and I forgot tonight. But it's a great book by a woman who was able to quit her day job and support herself as an artist. And it's all about sort of what her best practices have been. So just quickly going through Alison Strafella's artist statement, and I'm intentionally showing this to you before I show you her work. I began using a typewriter for its obvious function to record my thoughts and ideas. So already you know she's using a typewriter for something. Communicating is crucially a constant struggle for me. So where did this work come from? Well, it came from her own struggle with communication. The more I typed, the more the letters and words on the pages began to take on a new function for a new language. I discovered this new language created with my typewriter and paper was one made of patterns and grids formed by punctuation marks, commas, colons, apostrophes, and brackets. The typewriter was experiencing a breakdown, and this breakdown was my breakthrough. Beautiful. I had discovered a new way to communicate. There's an endless source of information that can be created through a limited use of materials. So here she's specifically talking about how the materials inspired her. Paper and a typewriter. I became and am still intrigued by this process. So you have a sense that she's been doing this for a little bit of time. So here is Alison's work. So this is actually typed. She's put the paper through a typewriter. This one she used like carbon paper. That one's directly typed on it. But she's made these kind of abstract images through using a typewriter. But looking back at her artist statement, you wouldn't know that communication is crucially a constant struggle for her, right? But when you look at the work, that really comes through, right? Like the letters jamming together. So anyway, so I feel like that artist statement is a great example for, it's not just explaining the work, but it's really giving you something you wouldn't necessarily know just by looking at it. Just a few basic writing tips. The good old show, don't tell. If you can give an example for, you know, how this medium inspired you, or something specific rather than just stating it, that's always going to make things come alive for a reader. Active voice, not passive voice. That's I will, I do, not I would or I could. Write about yourself and your work, not what the viewer should feel or think. You'll see a lot of artist statements out there of telling people what they should think or feel when they look at the artist's work, and we try and let viewers do that on their own. Avoid defensive language. This is another really weirdly common thing that happens in artist statements. Sometimes people get really defensive about their work and protective, and you know, we just want to know about it. Keep it accessible to the average reader. Try and avoid technical terms or art jargon. You know, sometimes people who've been in school too long tend to start using the $10 vocabulary words, or might reference a technique or a medium that might not be familiar to average person on the street. So try and keep it accessible. And spelling and grammar check. Have somebody proofread for clarity. Good advice all around. Any other questions about artist statements?
I do. So if you're kind of at a point in your work where like you have a really good strong body of work that's going to be in your portfolio, but when you find your artist statement shifting, I assume you're going to be like writing your statement for that new body of work, but it's going to be sort of jarring. They look through your portfolio and they're like, I'm not seeing this at all.
I would keep your artist statement reflective of what the viewer is going to see.
Okay.
Yeah. So if
Find the overarching concepts, I guess.
yeah, I would keep it reflective of what the viewer is going to see, because you know, and if they're not going to see images from that newer body, and now if they are, then I think it's fine to say, you know, at this stage in my career, I'm transitioning into this new thing that I find fascinating, if that's what they're going to see. If you're not including that, like for this opportunity, if you're not including that new work in your work samples, I would just keep your artist statement reflective of what the jurors are going to see. Yeah.
Like, so in that situation, could she put in the proposal section, maybe touch more on where it's going?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Are there any cliches that you've been on a panel, say for RAC, and you've just heard 20 people give the same, like, 2 or 3 points, and you're like, would people please stop reading that as part of their statement?
Not like word for word, but I would say just very abstract language is a stumbling block. Abstract language that doesn't say anything. You know, my work is about life, or, you know, just something that doesn't really tell you anything is not helpful and just uses up word limitations that you should be spending on something else, you know. Any other questions? Yeah.
I have a simple question. So when you're applying and showing your work, not so much the writing part, and you have an idea, a specific idea of the space, you want to show any kind of mock-ups or just the work?
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
All right. So, next application requirement, 2 of 2. Submit, or 2 of 3. Submit an exhibition proposal that outlines what you intend to create and exhibit in the 2016 Great Rivers Biennial exhibition. And I feel like it's worth pointing out that the 2013 application round, this was optional. This year it is not. It is mandatory, which to me shows how much more emphasis they're putting on your vision for the space. So this is all they give you, is submit a proposal. But let's talk about what that means. So the proposal is extremely important. And, you know, I said on here should include, but it should include most of these. I don't think it needs to include every single thing. But a place to start would be a basic description of the project, the sort of elevator speech, you know. In a couple of sentences, what do you intend to do? And that's really hard. That's going to be the hardest part of this application, is in a couple of sentences, what are you going to do? A way to think about that would be, what will the viewer experience be like? You know, there's going to be a lot of discussion in this process of what's going to fit into CAM's mission as a exhibition space. So what is the viewer experience going to be like when people walk into the gallery and they see your work? How is the project specific to the Great Rivers Biennial? Again, we looked at some of the past artists that have been shown. You've seen the full season of programming that CAM does. So how is this project specific to this opportunity? How does it contribute to the global contemporary art conversation? We want St. Louis to be a worldwide art city, right? So how is this going to be part of that? How does the project reflect your signature as an artist? So kind of to your question, but through your artist statement, through your work samples, you're establishing who you are as an artist. So how does this proposal reflect that? And it might be, this is the next stage of my creative career. This is the next step for me as an artist. And in fact, that is a very strong thing that you should put in there. If this should be a next step for you. This should be the next big thing for you. But how does it reflect how you've already, the path that you're already on? What would the project timeline be? I don't think that they're looking for ultra specific here, but a basic concept of the project. If there's going to be some kind of major research involved or some kind of major materials gathering required, or a process that would be very labor intensive, include that. Make sure you talk about that. And all of this is building up to the concept that this might very well be a lot of new work, right? A lot of new creation. And then describe how the project would spur, as I said, the creation of new work. And also a budget. So very basic, but reflective of the award amount. We'll talk about that in a second. Yeah.
So in the last one you said you don't want to tell the viewer what they're going to see. How is that different from this one where you're basically telling how the viewers are going to see the work? Is that just two separate things?
The artist statement, the artist statement, you shouldn't be talking about how the viewer should see your work in a emotional sense.
Okay.
Yeah, this is, you actually want to literally say, they're going to see paintings on the wall, or they're going to see something on the floor, or they're going to see whatever. So this is actually, you literally do need to tell the jurors what the viewers are going to see. Not how they should interpret it, but what physically, is going to be in the room. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So writing prompts to help get you started thinking about how you might answer the exhibition question. I can't encourage you enough to start your proposal with the words, if included in the 2016 Great Rivers Biennial, I would, or I will do this. It's very easy. Sometimes people get very shy when they're writing about a proposal or asking for a grant or something like that. People tend to want to talk all about philosophy and a life story and all the things going on in the world, and please may I have $1,000. Come out of the gate. I mean, just say what you're going to do right up front, and then talk about all the meaning behind it. When we talk about looking at the work samples, and we talked about those 200 applications, when you know you've got 200 applications to review, you're not going to spend an hour on each one. You're going to spend like 10 minutes on each one. So be as clear and concise and direct as possible. Think about what's going to stick in their mind, right? This is like Don Draper time, right? You got to make your sales pitch. So what's going to stick in their mind when they're flipping through 200 applications and they're only going to pick 3? How is yours going to stand out? What are you interested in as an artist? What are you excited about pursuing? If you're writing about something that you are excited and passionate about, that's going to come through. And that's going to be one of the things that sticks out, right? It's got to be what you are genuinely fascinated by and you are genuinely excited about. There's going to be a lot of people who apply who are going to pitch what they think is going to win, or they, but it may not be what they are genuinely excited about. But I guarantee you that's what comes through. Where does this project fit within the context of your career? We kind of talked about that, right? The point of this exhibition is to be that next big step for artists. So that's what they're going to be looking for. Why is this opportunity so great for you? What's it going to allow you to do that you've never been able to do before? Right? If I had $20,000 to give away to an artist, I'd want to give it to somebody who was going to make the most of it, right? How does your work or this project relate to the contemporary art world, other artists, et cetera, et cetera? We kind of talked about that, contextualizing it. Does your project fit the ambition indicated by the $20,000 reward? Not over, not under. And I think that that's really something to take to heart. The amount, that's a lot of money, right? The amount of that money should indicate the ambition of the project. So for some people, it might indicate a cap, like don't go crazy. But for most of us, I think we tend to kind of work within the confines that we have, right? Like we have small budgets for our projects, we're working on evenings and weekends, whatever. This should indicate the ambition that they want you to think about. And to your question, you are encouraged to include a rendering of your proposed project as part of your work samples. So if you do have the opportunity to create a draft or a rendering of some sort of what your installation would look like, absolutely submit.
But what if the schematic of an exhibition layout is radically different from your usual work? Do you think that it might just be disruptive to have like a bunch of pristine something else and then get to the schematic of, maybe a gallery layout or something or other in the end?
I don't think so. Alex, I don't know if you want to chime in here, but I think if what you're proposing is in conversation with your work samples that you've already submitted, it should naturally, it shouldn't look like a totally different person submitted it, right?
I think as long as it's clearly labeled that it's a rendering, that it's a rendering of a specific space or something specifically that you're proposing to do, I don't think there should be a problem. Either labeled within the file itself or on below the image, like an architectural drawing, it says like this is a proposed image.
That being said, do you guys have floor plans for the gallery space that we could use?
Yeah, we do actually. Yeah, we can make those available.
Yeah, that's a great question.
That last bullet point there is, and maybe you covered it, maybe you will soon, is a budget part of this proposal, part of this application process?
It doesn't specifically ask for a budget. That said, when we're talking about all those things that are going to make your proposed project stand out as a clear, well thought through vision, you're going to make yourself look smart if you show that you've done a little research and you know how much your project's going to cost.
As a follow-up question, is what would be the protocol in the slide that was up just a second ago? Trying to make sure the ambition of your project fits within the $20,000 reward. How do you consider injecting like an artist fee or say your labor, say your material's only $10,000, but it's very labor intensive? Is there a standard for that? And because a lot of the things as far as when you're in grad school, you don't include your labor. It's just kind of
right. And that was something. Yeah, that was something we talked about a little bit, and actually, kind of on the next slide. Yeah, thank you. And Alex, I'll let you, since you're actually going to be the administrative side of this, talk a little bit about about the use of the grant funds.
Yeah, in terms of specifically what you're asking in terms of questions and labor, an artist's time is valuable. So, as a practicing artist, I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that like your labor is X amount of dollars within your budget if you're doing it hypothetical. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Is there anything specifically wrong?
I know that was something when we first met, that it's not predetermined, the artist should have this much, as a purely award and then has a budget of this much to actually work with for the creation of it. I think that there's kind of good and bad things about that, personally, but the artist should be responsible. This artist, and this is on the website now too, be responsible for all the production, for the supplies, materials, et cetera, and then Pam will be in charge of the actual installation.
So, just to kind of answer that a little bit more too, this idea is like you're creating a museum quality exhibition. right? So museum quality exhibition is going to be expensive, that is expected. I think there's gonna be an expectation that, you know, you utilize the money to basically create this exhibition. Obviously, we all understand there's living expenses involved, and you'll be taking a lot of time to actually work on this on site or what have you. But it's also an expectation, I think, that, you know, when you put it up, you want to really be proud that, you know, you put a lot of time, grant money, energy, blood, sweat, and tears into the project.
I mean, what happens if the piece had to be built in here? Because it wouldn't fit through one of your doors.
I think that's something you would work out with.
Would
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
have CAM people working on that, or us hire our own people to do that?
Yeah, are you gonna get to that later in the presentation, or should I answer that now? Okay, so we will have, basically, you'll be working, as Bridget said, you'll be working with an organizing curator. So once the jurors kind of select it, basically, Jeff Uslip, who is our chief curator, will be the organizing curator, which basically means that they facilitate and work with you throughout the project. So, you know, whatever you're proposing, the curator is going to work with you to kind of help you realize that vision and make, you know, do follow-up studio visits with you. That's why it's so critical that you're here kind of like during those periods, because it's a process. Like it's not like you're selected and then all of a sudden, you know, here it is, create your work, come in, make it, and you're out. No, it is a continuous conversation with the museum staff, with the organizing curator. I mean, really want to stress that, like, you know, the museum is involved once you are selected. Like, the museum plays a role in helping you, not hindering you. And in terms of like building things on site, as with all of our exhibitions, we have an install crew, we have a registrar, and an install crew that will basically be, you know, assigned to you to help you with very specific needs that you might have. That said, if there's something that is kind of like astronomical, or if there's something that's very large to your piece that requires you spend the grant resources on that, you should budget for that, and you should kind of prepare for that. You know, we have, again, an install crew that kind of like comes in and works on things on site and helps build it. Like, for instance, with, I think Carly Trusclair's piece would be a good example. You know, Carly was here on site every day working on this. Now, we had a few people helping her to kind of create it because there's obviously a deadline and there's a lot of work to complete. However, the staff resources will be limited because there will be potentially 2 other artists that the install crew will be working with as well, and those will all be to be determined projects that will also require lots of time and energy.
So usually on the schedule, then you guys have how many weeks that you usually
That's a great question. So the exhibition opens up May 6th, and let's see here. The exhibition before that closes April 10th. So that'll be like a week or so of de-install, so usually around 3 weeks, give or take, is kind of the install time. And the walls will already be pretty much set up and ready for you guys to go, unless, again, there are specifics that you really mention and call attention to that require, you know, additional walls to be built or something like that.
Yeah, so for those additional walls, does that come out of your budget, or would that be kind of part of the grant?
Great question. I think it depends on the specifics of it. I think it depends on the details of those walls. And I hope that's not being abstract, but it's just
No, I'm
like
thinking
basic
of the
drywall
The
structure.
other artists have a little room, and I know you guys usually have that room, but I know you also do rotating walls, so I wasn't sure
Yeah.
kind of.
So So it's a little bit of a process that you'll be working with the organizing curator on this. That's really where he comes into play. Because remember, potentially there'll be 3 total people. So he'll be working with you to kind of say like, well, what's your proposal? What's this other person's proposal? What's this other person's proposal? And then basically selecting the galleries which makes sense for each one. Because we have a gallery A, B, and C, it's a large space, and we actually have kind of 3 subdivided galleries. So basically working with each artist depending upon their needs to assign them to those specific galleries based upon the proposal.
So that's part of the conversation there. So in my
Yes.
proposal, I wouldn't say this work is specific for gallery
I think if you guys, if that is important, like the lighting in there or the curvature of the wall is important, I think definitely add that in there. Definitely, yeah. But it's also not guaranteed because imagine
Yeah, some of that
someone
will go
else
out.
that might say a similar thing. So everything's going to be a conversation. You know, the proposal, just because you submit the proposal, it will always be kind of a changing living document based upon conversation.
Yeah, and I wouldn't hold yourself back, you know, based on, well, if you don't get the big gallery. I mean, I propose your vision, you know, be true to what you envision for the space, be true to what you envision for your work, and what's going to be in the best service of your work. You know, so I wouldn't get too caught up in, you know, what if I don't get the space I want, or whatever, you know, or what if the walls aren't exactly where I want them. I think that, you know, one of the great things about this opportunity is not only is it the cash award and not only is it the, you know, getting a show in a museum space, it's the professional development experience of working with a museum and working with the curator through this process. You know, it's pretty rare, you know, in the contemporary art world that things get installed maybe exactly as, you know, the artist envisioned them. I know Alex, you probably work with a lot of artists here, you know, with the, you know, great things and limitations of the space. I mean, there's always going to be a little bit of back and forth, and I think that that's, like I said, one of the great things about this opportunity is you get that experience. And really think of it as project management as well. I mean, this is one of the things Max talks about all the time, right? Is as you're thinking through that budget, that timeline, that kind of things, I mean, that's where you start putting yourself in the shoes of the project manager as well. So, so think about those aspects of it, those sort of logistical aspects of it, in addition to the creative vision. Yeah.
My question, we were talking about like writing it down now with the budget, like when you're doing something like the installation, I mean, those budgets can go crazy, but like take me, I do just paint drawings, stuff like that. Like my budget will only go so far, but it will take me months and months and months before it's go down. How do you put that down without it sound like you're saying, oh, just taking a big chunk of money because I'm going to take a lot of time off to do this?
No, I think that, I mean, you know, Alex mentioned, I mean, you know, think about what the value of your time is. You know, and if it's, I have to work fewer hours at my job, and I have to, you know, in order to get this done in the time frame and the timeline that I'm proposing. No, I think you can absolutely think about it that way, even if what the project you're proposing, the materials aren't, you know, you're not using gold dust or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, but yeah, to your point, I mean, but again, keep in mind that award should reflect the scale. So maybe it's more time than you've ever spent on a painting project. You know, it should reflect the ambition of what you're proposing. It shouldn't be something that you could just do in another gallery.
Is travel okay to wrap into that, or research?
I think it is. I think that's happened in the past where it's like travel, research, depending upon your work, like if you were creating a new body of work, you might have to say like, I need to be able to go to X, Y, and Z, visit, research, and what have you. I think that's perfectly acceptable.
Great. Back to where we were. Okay, any other questions about the exhibition proposal part of the application?
What is the skill sets of the installation crew that Cam will provide?
The skill set, is that what you said?
In past maybe just some white glove.
Sure. the white glovers, there definitely are handlers, but a lot of them are also, trained in carpentry and metalwork and things like that. But with that said, they're not like fabricators in the sense that they're, trained in specific sculptural
They won't be
mediums.
engineering anything.
They're not engineers, yeah, you guys are the engineers, right? So you have to come with the plans, and they might say, yeah, listen, this might not work because X, Y, and Z, or that's a fire hazard, or, you know what I mean? So, there's always gonna be that conversation, but depending upon really what you need, in terms of the skill set, I wouldn't depend too much on that skill set in terms of on-site. Just think about it more so as installation based, right? Not necessarily fabrication on-site,
Yeah.
but installation based.
So if you're splitting this logistically between 3 artists, the team is how many people that you guys have?
The team is usually between, depending upon the requirements of each work, between 8 to 10, I think, is usually a ballpark of how many people. Again, this depends upon the scale and what's required, that's all a conversation. We kind of like, when the artwork is, when we're reviewing the artwork, that's all kind of a conversation of like, well, how many people do you think you need for this? And that'll be a conversation that we'll have internally and probably also with the artists, about that.
No one's not gonna get it because of Cam's, doesn't have enough people to move it, or, like, if it's a compelling vision, it'll happen, I think.
Right, I mean, one of the requirements, I believe, on the website talks about how you really are responsible for getting the work to this space, right? So you have to get it here. So if you have shipping costs, if you need to ship this, you will be responsible for shipping that. Once the work is in the space, then we kind of start to become a part of it and help you in different ways. But, you're responsible for getting it here, whether that's a truck that you rent or whether that's a shipping company, that takes a semi to get it here.
Great, want to keep moving here? Okay, so, when you get to the bottom of the application, you will see a space to upload 9 things. You're going to upload 1 CV or resume and 8, or up to 8, work sample images, or 7 work sample images and a rendering, or fewer work sample images if that suits you better, although I recommend taking full advantage of it if you can. Yes?
If we're applying as like a collaborative team, like 2 people are applying as a collaborative team, how do we split up the application, like with work samples, CVs, and statements?
If you're applying as a collaborative team, is that was the question? If you're applying as a collaborative team, then you're one application, right? So you have to, in a sense, tell us what your team is. You're telling us the artist statement of your team. You're telling us the images of your team. It's no different. You're just a single entity. So you would, in a sense, in your artist statement say, we are a collaborative team between X, Y, and Z, and we do X, Y, and Z within your proposal. So it's one. It would just be one application in that sense, if that's the process that you're taking.
And the CV would necessarily, I guess, just be both people's half.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, I think.
I mean, if the collaborative itself has a CD of things that you've done together in the past, I would upload that as a single document.
But if that's too limited a story, how do we include both people in the video series?
Yeah, I think if you're a collaborative team with 2 people, you're applying for one application, you could probably just make the CV be, one person, and then the second page or third page or whatever, start with the other person. I don't think that would be a problem if that's how you're applying, right? Because then you would be potentially receiving, if you want, one award amount for that collaborative team to execute the work.
don't obviously want to see a 20-page CV, but
Right.
you're probably not a big career.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. So let's move on. Okay, so sometimes seeing upload your CV makes people really, really nervous. To your point, your CV does not have to be long. It is not the basis of your getting this or any other award. In the history of awarding grants and fellowships and exhibition opportunities, no one has said, wow, this person is excellent, I would love to give them this award, except they only have a couple of things on their CV, therefore they are not worthy of it. No one has ever said that. So do not be concerned that your CV is not pages and pages long. It should provide context for where you are in your art career. That's really why they ask. It's not because they want to see, oh, you showed at this place or that place, or have you done a good job getting gallery shows. It's really because the jurors want to see, is this someone who is just starting out in their art career? Is this someone who's been around for a couple of years? Is this someone who's been showing, like, whoa, their first show was in 1970 something, and that's really why they ask. So it shouldn't be seen as this, qualification based on how many bullet points you have. That said, it should not be too long. I said no more than 3 pages. If it is longer than that, that's probably not the end of the world. But just know that that's, every page you submit is a further, bisection of time that these folks are going to spend looking at it, at your application overall. It should really include art career or other art, experience relevant information. So not, professional jobs that have nothing to do with your career. Teaching, yes, can go on there. If you don't have one, again, this is one of those you should have it in your back pocket at all times kind of thing. So I highly recommend taking the opportunity of applying for this award to create your CV. It should obviously have your name and contact info, your education, exhibitions, awards, grants, and residencies, a bibliography if your work's been published anywhere, any collections if your work is in, a private collection, commissions, festivals, screenings, performances, and then other professional activities if you wrote for a blog or if you, submitted an article somewhere and it was published. That should be included. The College Art Association website has a great template and sample of artistic CVs. So I really recommend going there and looking at that for sort of if you're starting from scratch and you want to see some models or some templates. Or really, many of the artists, like the ones I showed at the beginning of the presentation, Investments website. If you look at other artists' websites and start looking, almost everybody has their CV on their website, and you can look at that as well. It's also a great place to look and find other opportunities for funding, because you can see what awards they've got.
So where do you draw the line with collections? I mean, because I could say like my grandma has one of my paintings, or like Bruno David owns one of my paintings. Where do you draw the line?
If you were on the other side of the panel and you were looking at someone's CV, what do you think you would do? So just think about it that way.
Well, I mean, is that like where you're trying to name drop? I mean, what's the point of the collections?
If it's not so much, I mean, in the, private collection of Agnes Dunn or whatever, but if it's in a corporate art collection, if it's in a library, if it's in a university collection, something like that. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, work samples. Let me first say that if you go to the CAM, the Great Works Biennial application website, I don't know if the link is up there just on its own, but I know that if you click here for 6 tips on your application that I wrote, there is a link in there to a video presented by a former colleague of mine at the New York Foundation for the Arts. It is 40 minutes, it is all about work samples, and it is amazing. I really recommend taking a look at this video and watching it. It goes into way more depth than we're going to get in here, but it is very, very helpful. And again, having that sort of portfolio of work samples is the kind of thing you're going to stress over it for this thing if you haven't already put those together. But once you've got them, apply for like 10 things because they are really tough to put together. But once you've got a good, solid work sample portfolio, you can use it for a lot of different stuff. Same thing for the artist statement and the CV, right? These are the things like in your toolbox. And then when opportunities come up, You don't have to be up till 2 in the morning putting your application together because you've already got those critical components ready to go. So you are going to upload 8 images or video sound files or whatever you need to do. They should be of that 300 dpi, 5 inches wide, and label each image with that type of numbering system. Number, dash, first name, dash, last name. In that exact form. Or else you've made Alex's life difficult. Curating your work samples. So work samples are going to be, let's get through this and then we'll take questions. So putting your work samples together basically means you're going back to your portfolio and you're going to select up to 8 works that reflect your clarity of vision as an artist. Really, the general rule of thumb is to go with depth over breadth. I'm going to show you a couple of samples that will explain why you want to do that. Select works that show your best talents in one area. And I know this is the kill your darlings moment. It is so hard to not put in that awesome drawing that you did, even though you're applying as a painter for this opportunity. When the panelists are going through the work samples, we're going to look really quickly at how quickly they go through them. And what's going to make you stick out in their brains when they try and think back on the, 200 applications times 8 work samples, the 1,600 images that they've seen, you've got to do your best to stick out in that field. And having a strong, clear vision that comes through in your work samples is the best way to do that. You're going to be creating a cohesive identity for yourself as an artist to the panelists. I was doing a similar presentation to this one time and talking about this clarity of vision and your signature image. And afterwards, someone came up to me and said, "You're talking about branding." And that's really kind of what you're doing here. If possible, select works that are no more than 5 years old. I realize that may not be applicable to everybody, but you really should be submitting work that's as recent as possible. So basic work sample tips. Quality of work samples is the utmost importance. Cannot say that enough. Quality of your work samples is of the utmost importance. It is what you should spend the most amount of time on. A high resolution image is essential. Do not use a cell phone picture from a phone from 5 years ago. Borrow a camera or find a photographer if necessary. You must submit a very high quality work sample. Place your artwork on a neutral background, white, black, or gray. Even lighting, no glares or dark spots. It sounds crazy, but sometimes people submit things and there's a big lens flare or something. Take several images to capture the correct color intensity and black-white contrast. It's amazing. And even, let me go back really quickly to Allison. Can you turn around the laptop? Look at the difference between the blue on there and the blue here. And this is how the panelists are going to see it, projected on this, like on a painted white wall. So take a couple of different pictures and make sure that it's accurately representing the color in your work. Okay. Fill the frame completely as possible without cropping the edges of your work. You don't want anything distracting, in around the edges or in the background. You wouldn't believe some of the work samples that, again, when I was at NIFA, that would be submitted for that fellowship application that I told you about. I mean, people would just set something up in their bedroom and take a picture, and there would be dirty laundry in the corner. I mean, it's like, do you even care? So really spend a lot of effort in making sure you have high quality images of your work that will put you in the best light. For installations, performances, or interactive works, you want to make sure your work sample captures the depth of field needed to understand the work. So if it's something that's experiential for a viewer, you want to make sure that you have an image of that that shows the depth of field. Maybe you have someone in the image that's interacting with the work in some way. You may need to use more than one work sample image to show different angles or in detail. And I'm going to show you an example of 2 of those 8 slots that would be used to show the image and then a detail. And it's really worth it, I think, to show that detail, especially if you have a distinctive technique that you want to show off. For performances, you may wish to include a brief description of the performance and contextualize the moment that we're seeing. So if you have something that's interactive, you'll see you can submit a sentence or two to describe each work. So you definitely want to contextualize what folks are seeing. I would say if you do have work that is more installation-based or is interactive-based, you definitely want to be there when things are set up and make a point to take pictures of it, like sort of before, during, and after people have interacted with it. So I'm going to run through quickly now a set of images that are all by the same artist. And I want to show you about how quickly the panelists are going to go through your work samples that you submit. And then it's on to the next one. That's all you get. So you have got to knock it out of the park. They're not going to go back. That's all you get in the first round. So now I want to go back and just talk quickly for what you've seen. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for time-based things like film clips?
For
or
film clips,
animation?
I think that is there a limitation on, because they can upload a video, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any, I would have to go back and look, I don't think there's any type of limitation on the clip that you can upload. However, with that said, they're also probably only look at part of it, right? So whether or not they kind of like look at the beginning, the middle, and the end, that's just kind of what
So
they
if it's
do.
a 5-minute thing, you're only gonna bank on them looking at the first 30 seconds.
Not necessarily. I mean, all jurors are going to react to it a little bit different depending upon that visual impact and their knowledge, right? So this is kind of what you're talking about as well. It's about this kind of visual knowledge and understanding, you know, what I've seen and what I understand and then move on type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind that this is, again, 200 applications. Each application has 8 images. The jurors want to go to lunch sometime. You know, I mean, this is, yeah, exactly.
Would it matter at all to the jurors if the work is work that's been previously exhibited or work that's, you know, you have not yet exhibited?
I don't think so. There's no for your work samples. No, and in fact, if you have installation shots like this, where it's being seen in a gallery, I don't think that that's bad at all.
Yeah, I mean, are you asking specifically if like the work has to be new and created?
No, I'm more that, you know, I have some images that are, I think, really good, but perhaps could be better of work that I've had in galleries before. So I was thinking, well, should I try reshooting those images or try to find
That's going to be a personal.
Yeah, you know, I am always in favor of newer and better quality images of your work, so I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, you in the back had a question.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that if are you limited if you upload a video that you're not allowed to upload any images, or should they count for one of the 8?
It should count for one of the 8.
Okay.
It's like,
So could you upload up to 8 videos?
Yeah. If you are like a video-based artist and that is your work, then yeah, that's the video that you're submitting. And I believe it's, I might have to go back and look at the application, but I believe it's 8 and that includes your PDF.
Okay.
I might have to.
Oh, okay.
Is that correct? Or is it 9? And then
It's-
PDF. I think it might be 9.
Yeah, it's 9.
9.
Yeah.
So like, for instance, it's,
Yeah,
you
it's 9
you
total.
upload 9 total things, but one of those things is going to be your people.
So I want to go back really quickly and talk about, so this artist's name is Matthew Delegate, and actually, since I first used his work. He's a friend, so I feel okay using his images. Since I used his work in this presentation, this piece was in the last Whitney Biennial. So probably because I used it in my PowerPoint, but anyway, but you can see from this selection, even though it's two different bodies of work, this is one where he's painted sort of plywood and then he uses a hammer to break it out. And then this is another one, this whole series was about bombing and tagging, and the colors that he used were colors that are used on a Navy freighter. But you could probably tell those were all by the same artist. Even though they're two different series, you could probably tell this is a guy who's interested in color, he's interested in playing with the idea of what a painting is, he's interested in doing different things to a canvas on a stretcher. You could probably tell this was all the same person. You could probably walk into a gallery and see something that looks like this and think, oh yeah, I recognize that. He's got a pretty clear signature coming through. Now I tell you, he does a lot of different things, but this is his identity for what would be this application. I want to show you another set by Vesna, since she's coming. And this is an example of, here's the work, and here's a detail. And she would say in her description that this is a detail of this part of it. So in this, you can see the work as a whole, and then this really shows that fine pencil work that she's done. So really a good opportunity to show her skill, her technical skill, as an artist by including that detail that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Another work from a different series, but again, showing that signature clarity image. I know she's not signature, like you can tell it's by the same person. Now, if she had included this in her work samples, it jars, right? It doesn't feel like it's by the same person. And even though she may think this is the best ceramics piece I've ever made, it jumps out at you. It doesn't feel like it flows with the rest of it. So I really want to encourage you, it doesn't all have to be from the same series, but I really want to encourage you to, when you curate your work samples, to think about, I mean, really, if you can, have somebody else come over and, put them into a PowerPoint or put your images up on the computer and have somebody look at it and done, and see what they take away from it. Kind of do a little mini mock panel for yourself. Have somebody else who, may not be familiar come in and look at it and say, is there something that jumps out to you as it doesn't really fit, it doesn't really jive, or that doesn't seem like it would be by me. Any other questions about work samples? Yes.
So, as a sculptor, I have in the past cheated with the number of images by splicing multiple, like a detail into the same image, so I can maximize. Is that a no-no?
What do you think?
Again, I think that's going to be a personal preference. I think depending upon, it's so specific, the question that you asked is very specific because depending upon the work and what you're trying to show and depending upon your larger body of work, I can understand the need to do that, but just understand what you're doing by that is possibly cutting yourself short because you don't have a full-size image that you're looking at little sections and cross-sections. However, if that is part of the process, in terms of like understanding that there's maybe multiple different stages, if you're just using it as to show different angles, then I would avoid it. That's his advice though.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would give yourself the full, I mean, think about it, if there was like a square here with the detail, I don't know. I mean, I personally am much more impressed by giving it the whole fair share of the whole slide. Yeah.
What about work we've done commercially, like for instance, music video that we made for a record label? But it's my own idea, probably very low budget, a cool band, let's say it's a cool band, but it's still, I got paid to do it. And
I think it goes back to Bridget's idea about this idea of cohesion. So if it kind of embodies, you know, your signature.
Yeah.
And it makes sense in terms of like being able to see this sequence of imagery or video or multimedia, and to go for it.
Yeah, I would say if it's in dialogue with the other things that you're submitting, then absolutely. If everything else was like really experimental and challenging, and then something that really felt more commercial, I wouldn't include it. But if it fits in nicely with the rest of your work examples, yeah, I would say just because it was work for pay, I would disqualify it.
Okay, and one more question. I made a movie in St. Louis last year, but I don't want to upload the whole movie. But a movie trailer, how would you feel about that included in the work?
Yeah, I think there's a line for all the images and multimedia in terms of like not only the credit, but I think I'll have to go back and look on the website, but being able to upload like a description of what these works are in a sense, right? Kind of an extended label, if you will. And I'll check the website too, and you can follow up with me directly about making sure that's specific enough in terms of what you're uploading and what the size requirements are. I'm gonna have to, if you guys are looking at the, if there's any video related people in here, you're actually uploading and you're not actually sending just a link, maybe follow up with me directly because I'll have to see what the size limitations are for the software. Like, you know, obviously gigabytes won't work, right? Mostly because you probably don't have none of us have fast enough internet. It'll take you hours to upload, right? So let me double check those size requirements, and I'll maybe even post it directly to the submittable site. Okay, thank you.
All right. So with your images, you can write a brief print line or short description for each video, image, video, or sound file, 1 to 2 sentences maximum. You do not have to do this. If the work speaks for itself, you don't feel pressure to submit that. I think that this should be used to express something that that someone couldn't get from looking at the work. It's kind of similar to your artist statement, but you may want to say that it's part of a series, or it may be a moment to talk about, you know, I learned a new technique in making this or something like that. And then just to remember to write the image number first as it corresponds to the description. So we talked about it 1 dash first name dash last name. So image number 6, you know, shows, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So after the announcement is made, if you receive the award, you will enter into a professional contract with the Contemporary Museum. So again, I think that is part of the professional development side of this, is learning how to go over a contract, look at what's in the contract, and making sure that you can fulfill all those terms. As we kind of just talked about earlier, the artists are going to be assigned to a certain gallery, but that's part of a process in dialogue with the curator. We talked about having to be available for those follow-up studio visits, and then if you are selected, to be available to CAM for the PR, for conversations with the curator about the development of the project, interviews, releasing your images for press, and other related details. So it's really a really great experience, but it is also going to be your time that you'll be giving up to be part of this. So make sure that you can be available. The artist might be asked to engage in public programming, education workshops, tours, private events, panel discussions, artist talks, whining and dining, glitz and glam, right? And then I always remind people of this, that $20,000 is taxable income. Now, if you're spending some of it on your materials and such things, those of course are deductions that you can take. I would recommend working with a tax professional to get through all of that stuff. And frankly, if you are spending money on art supplies, if you're spending money on a studio space, or if a part of your home is being used for your artistic production, you should be talking with somebody about your taxes and what's deductible anyway. But I always like to remind people that whenever you get any kind of fellowship or award, even those $300 rack grants, it's taxable income.
Can the artist contract be with an entity that represents the artist, like an LLC, or does it have to be, does the payment have to go directly to the artist?
I would have to look into that to actually answer that question. I don't think there would be a problem if it went to like another entity, but I would have to.
Okay.
Any other questions about sort of your end of the bargain? Well, good luck. You all have already given yourselves a very strong competitive edge just by being here. I also recommend taking advantage of the fact that you're in a room full of other artists that you may or may not know. This is actually also a great networking opportunity, and if you need a buddy, maybe to look at your artist statement, or you want to look at somebody else's work samples, just turn to the person next to you and maybe trade emails, and take advantage of just being in this room.
I have 3 questions.
Okay.
I wrote down, but I didn't interject them when I should have. Number 1, the deadline, is that in the central time zone, our time zone?
I would think so, yeah.
Okay. Number 2, for if someone didn't have a decent studio space and they had to arrange an alternative space for the panel to come tour, because it's in semi-finalists, what kind of alternative space are we talking about? Has this been done before? Where did you do it before?
So this is actually the first time that we've done studio visits by the Jurors with artists. So this will be the first round that we've done this. However, with that said, we also understand that not every artist has studio space or space in which people can enter and engage and things like that, or the artist might not feel comfortable with that. With that said, a room like this can be made available for the presentation of the work, whatever that work might be, and the engagement of the conversation. Just remember, these studio visits are about kind of like learning who you are as an artist in your working environment and your process. So it's about kind of like having that conversation and seeing how you work as an artist, and that'll help the jurors understand really how you make work and why you're a good fit. So if you're an artist that you don't have a studio space, then you should be not worried about it at all. Like, maybe that's just not part of your practice. Maybe, maybe the city is your studio space, so you can always come in here and talk.
Yeah, or a computer.
Yeah, or a computer. It just depends on your art.
So like, say you have a whole studio,
Mhm.
you don't want a bunch of people coming to your house, you still use this, or you got,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have a studio space?
This space can be arranged.
Okay.
So let's say, there'll be 10 semi-finalists that'll be selected for a studio visit. So you would say, listen, I don't think the studio space is going to work out, and we would talk with you about what would work best. Like, well, what are you going to show us? What are you going to do? And we arrange a time to have you come in and present your work.
Or if you want to jump on, should you have like your mom show up to cook for everyone? Yes, yes. Yes.
Also, this doesn't apply to me personally, but I know other people who are applying. Not everyone has a website set up for themselves at this point in time who might be applying, and how seriously should they worry about that? Because, between now and the deadline, for some people, all it's going to be is writing and polishing up more images and more pieces, and they don't have time to really put together a website. Like, that can take 3 months to put together a website. That's amazing.
Well, let me first say that once you've completed this application, you have everything you need to put on a website. I mean, most artist websites are past work, their statement, and their CV, and their contact information. Some even have less. So let me first say that for those that don't have a website, that this application process is going to set you up to have one. And then the second thing I want to say is that, more and more for professional development as an artist, it's really almost mandatory to have a website. It's not going to necessarily be the thing that makes or breaks this particular application, But for future professional growth as an artist, it's really, really something that I would recommend everyone have. You know, and it's, you know, it shouldn't necessarily take 3 months to build. It can, but it should be something that, you know, domain names are cheap and you know, that if they don't have one, this should be a prompt to say, oh yeah, I should have a website, you know. So,
And just to touch on that really quick, again, as you said, it might not be a factor of this particular application process, but you know, there's a lot of portfolio-based websites that exist that do this specifically for artists, like Cargo Collective is one, Other People's Pixels is one, like they exist to do art portfolio websites.
yeah.
And,
Yeah, no one should have to like build it from
It's,
scratch.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
pre-designed templates, and then, you know, of course you're paying monthly fees, but.
In that conversation, do you guys have any views on where dedicated to a particular artist or to a particular practice where blogs fit in? Where like, how much do you give a F or not about, you know, someone's Tumblr blog or?
Yeah, I think, I'll answer this real quick.
Yeah, please.
I think the website aspect is supplemental material that allows the jurors to see more if they've kind of gone through your images, as kind of Bridget talked about and showed, you know, they're gonna go through those images and make their eliminations. And then if they wanna see more, that's what the websites exist for. You know, it's like, that's the supplemental material, if that exists. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it's better not to. You know, maybe it's like, that's the 8 images and I don't want to have, you know, them see anything else. That's a personal choice that Unison has made.
Yeah, and when I was going to see you asked about sort of Tumblr, you know, I mean, if the Tumblr is the art project, then yes, absolutely. If it's just, you know, personal things,
Representation of the practice?
that I would absolutely say, yeah, that would be relevant. That would be relevant, for sure. Yeah.
So, I think I know the answer to this, but what about like reviews and press clippings, stuff like that? Would that be better off put in the website knowing that any jurors would go there?
Yes, yeah, that, and then that should be listed on your CV as well, so they'll see that, and then if, for whatever reason, they do want to pursue it, they can find it there. Yeah, I think, I mean, you can embed hyperlinks in a PDF, so if you wanted to do that.
What is the syntax of impressions for the jurors? What do they see first, and how does that level out from there? I mean, is the images the first contact with the artist?
That's a good question.
I don't know what, do you know what system they're using? Are they using like Curate or?
They're using Submittable is the system, and other organizations like the New York Times. Basically, Submittable is a system in which, you know, think about it like an editor. You receive all these submissions, and then you kind of review it and make decisions and things like that. So they'll see probably, you know, the name of the person, and then they'll see being able to open up that person's. It's a interface basically. They'll have different buttons on it where you say like, here's your images, here's your, and you'll be able to scroll through it. It's just an interface. You can, I mean, you guys are welcome to go to that Submittable site and, you know, sign up and see how it works.
What's the name of the site?
It's called Submittable, and when you go to our website, the campbell.org/GOB, it has all the information that Bridget just talked about, but then when you actually hit, you know, apply, it's going to take you to the Submittable website, which is just a way for it to all compile together. And it's going to make you, you know, give a username, password, so you know, you can go back and work on your application, which is a really nice feature.
And no one will look at that until
That's
the
correct.
actual dates.
That's correct. Yeah, because we won't be able to see it until you hit submit, basically. Like, we won't, like you, if you create an account, you know, we can't see it until you hit that submit button.
Any other questions? Well, good luck.